So both Republicans and Democrats calling this a historic day. Former President Bill Clinton testifying before a congressional committee about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Just like Hillary Clinton's deposition yesterday, it is happening right near their home in Chappaqua, New York, outside of New York City at the Performing Arts Center, interestingly. So the former president shows up over and over again in the Epstein files, but he says that their, quote, brief acquaintance ended years before Epstein's crimes became public, telling the committee in his opening statement, "I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos you show me, I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I didn't see. I know what I did, and more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing, and I did nothing wrong," says former President Bill Clinton. House Oversight Chairman James Comer says that the committee is not accusing the Clintons of wrongdoing, but it was a long battle to get to this moment. Watch.
It took 7 months to get the Clintons in here, but we've got them in here, and we look forward to asking lots of questions that I think any curious media outlet in America would have. Yesterday, Ms. Clinton deferred a lot of questions to her husband today.
Republicans have now set a new precedent, which is to bring in presidents and former presidents to testify. So we're once again going to make that call that we did yesterday. We are now asking and demanding that President Trump officially come in and testify in front of the Oversight Committee.
So Chief Congressional Correspondent Chad Pergram reporting live from Chappaqua, outside where all of this is happening. Hi, Chad.
Martha, good afternoon. Never before has a president undergone questioning at a deposition by a congressional committee under a subpoena. Now, that changed this morning. Bill Clinton knew and traveled with Jeffrey Epstein. There is no allegation of wrongdoing by Bill Clinton, but Democrats say this is all a distraction from dealing with President Trump.
But let's be real, we are talking to the wrong president today. President Trump is the one who has not released 2.5 million files. President Trump is the one who is blocking our investigation. President Trump is the one who wants this to go away, but it will not go away.
Now, here is Bill Clinton's statement to the committee this morning. Even with 2020 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me pause. We are only here because he hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with his 2008 guilty plea, I had long stopped associating with him. Now, we're also learning about Hillary Clinton's testimony yesterday. Florida Republican Anna Paulina Luna suggested there may have been an effort by a U.S. ally to target the Clintons. She said Epstein was running a, quote, honeypot operation.
I don't know that Secretary Clinton was all that honest about the context of this investigation. We asked extensively about intelligence ties, whether or not she felt that she was targeted as a result of possibly an intelligence gathering operation. And she was very curiously interested in that.
Also, one Republican said Hillary Clinton lost her cool and was combative with the committee when asked tough questions. Ms. Mace, what do you mean that Hillary Clinton was screaming?
She was unhinged, and I hope that President Clinton is less unhinged today than his wife was yesterday. You'll see it.
Now the public can judge for itself when the video and transcript comes out, perhaps over the weekend. The deposition will probably go until this evening. Back to you.
Okay, Chad, thank you very much.
A few moments ago there in Chappaqua. Now the Democrats are speaking. Let's dip in here and listen.
Trump. But it is very well established that President Clinton had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and we are treating this investigation extraordinarily seriously. And when you see the recorded deposition, you will see that we asked all of the hard questions, centering the survivors, making sure that we get to the bottom of where there are discrepancies in the record, and understanding how not only the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein committed could go on, but why there was a culture that surrounded him wherein the rich and powerful turned a blind eye. And with that, I turn it back to our ranking member.
Hello, everybody. Congressman Maxwell Frost. First off, I just thank you to President Clinton for coming here today to speak with us. Answering these questions has been helpful for us as we will continue this investigation. Donald Trump, as we know, needs to come before this committee. He's been caught in multiple lies as it relates to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I can tell you I've seen unredacted files myself that directly refute his assertion that he kicked out Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago and the reasoning why he did that. Also, walking out of this, I can tell you we all now have a lot of new questions that we have to raise as it relates to the reasoning on why Donald Trump had a falling out with Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. Another thing is that I saw about an hour ago, Donald Trump in a press conference said that Howard Lutnick is, quote, a very innocent guy. Donald Trump has asserted many times that he knew nothing of Epstein's crimes. If he doesn't know anything about Epstein's crimes, how can he know for sure that Howard Lutnick is, quote, a very innocent guy? We have questions for him. And I think what today is showing and what yesterday is showing is, of course, no one's above the law. That includes the President of the United States. And my hope is that our Republican colleagues, as we walk out of here today and go back to D.C., will join us in making sure that we can hear from Howard Lutnick, from Pam Bondi, and from President Trump.
Good afternoon, Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari, representing Arizona's 3rd District. I think today was a historic day for transparency in the United States of America. The fact that we have the former President of the United States, Bill Clinton, under oath, speaking to the Oversight Committee and answering questions in a transparent manner is critical. I look forward to the Republican majority listening to our demands of having the transcripts and the videos unedited of both depositions, today's and yesterday's, released immediately, because the American public deserves to hear and see these answers for themselves. And ultimately, this demonstrates that nobody is above the law. And my top concern at this moment is the ongoing White House cover-up. It is deeply concerning that we are seeing a very coordinated machine from the President of the United States continuously repeating that he has been exonerated. He just repeated that today, to members of the Republican Party on the Oversight Committee repeating that lie as well. There are very credible allegations that have been looked into and investigated by the FBI that the Department of Justice is illegally withholding. Please do not stop asking about this. Why is the DOJ continuing to defy the Epstein Files Transparency Act by refusing to release the full Epstein files, by illegally withholding information, by deleting photos and videos of people like Howard Lutnick? This is unacceptable. Donald Trump must be deposed immediately in front of this committee, as do many senior level officials from this administration.
Congressman Suhas Subramanian from Virginia. If there was any doubt before today that Oversight Democrats are treating this investigation in a nonpartisan way, it'll be put to rest when the transcripts come out. We've been asking the former president.
Okay, you've been listening to the Democrats speak there amid the Clinton deposition live out of Chappaqua, New York. This following James Comer speaking a short time ago as well.
I like seeing him deposed, but, you know, they certainly went after me a lot more than that. I don't know anything about the Epstein files, you know. I've been fully exonerated. Yep.
Yeah, that was President Trump sounding off as former President Bill Clinton sits for his closed-door deposition about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It's happening right now in Chappaqua, New York. The House Oversight Committee wants to get to the bottom of Bubba's dealings with the notorious pedophile. And those creepy pictures we've all seen of him in a hot tub lounging with Ghislaine Maxwell. President Clinton has acknowledged flying on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane, but he maintains he did not know anything about Epstein's criminal activities. In a statement today, Clinton went even further, saying, quote, as someone who grew up in a home with domestic abuse, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself. Yesterday, the committee interviewed his wife for over 6 hours. Republicans say there was at least a dozen times when she deferred to their questions to her husband. And according to Nancy Mace, Hillary was, quote, unhinged. But the former Secretary of State says there is nothing to see here.
I answered every one of their questions as fully as I could, based on what I knew. And what I knew is what I said in my statement this morning. I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs. and a series of questions about Pizzagate. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that they asked literally the same questions over and over again.
You know, Greg, I feel like if they ask the same questions over and over again, maybe that's because they weren't getting an answer.
Well, I love lawyers getting lawyered.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. This is what you do to everybody. If you've ever been deposed or watched any of these hearings, you see that going around. I want full transparency, but at the same time, I'm skeptic of any high-volume allegations, and I've been that way. I'll list. I mentioned it before, the satanic preschool scare of the 1980s, where they said daycare centers were abusing children and with satanic rituals. That was an explosion. I was skeptical of the exponential rise of the non-binary identification and trans women, where it doubled and tripled and quadrupled in size. I was skeptical of the explosion of hate crimes. Many of them turned out to be hate crime hoaxes. I was skeptical of some of the Me Too accusations that turned out to be false, because when there is societal anxiety and media sensationalism plus flawed investigation, it's perfect turf for unstable people and motivating grifters. So you're going to have real stuff and you're going to have unreal stuff together. So it could be that, like, Bill Clinton is a sleazeball, probably. Did he take advantage of women? Probably. Did he take part in an international pedophile ring? I'm not going to go there. The problem with the Epstein scandal, it's like a box of tangled up wires. Some of the wires are real, some aren't, but they're tangled up, and it may take forever to untangle them, but it's fun. It could go on forever untangling them, and there are people that get sustenance from this. But you just have to remember that if all those things that I mentioned you agreed with me on, you have to supply intellectual rigor to the evidence, because it seems like the media isn't.
You're not wrong.
Thank you, Joey.
I agree. Shannon, on that topic, are House Republicans kind of taking the bait a little bit, bringing in the Clintons as opposed to interviewing the interviewers and maybe investigating the investigation?
Yeah, I mean, they did a good job in getting documents from the Epstein estate that we hadn't seen before. So it seems like Oversight has kind of their own lane that they're trying to go down. They know the Clintons, it's going to get a lot of headlines. And it's a rare, interesting bipartisan thing to me that you don't see very much in Washington. Remember, there was this sweeping letter from the Clintons a few weeks ago, like, we're drawing the line in the sand. America stands for one thing, and that's freedom, and we will go no further, until Democrats on the panel also voted to hold them in contempt along with Republicans. They're like, okay, we're going to show up today. So there is some progress here. Whether Hillary was any kind of productive witness for them, I doubt. But, you know, I think all of us who remember, I'm that old, when President Clinton stood there and said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, we take a lot of what he says with a grain of salt. And I think, you know, Greg's right. You got to look for evidence. And if you say these are super old pictures, they predate this and that, there's nothing to it, then do you apply the same standard to President Trump? I mean, I think you just have to be consistent.
Jesse, if we're talking about consistency, he did stand in front of a camera or sit in front of a camera and say, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. That turned out to be pretty false. Today, CNN's reporting today, he said he did not have sex with a woman in the jacuzzi, and he doesn't know who she is.
A lot of question marks out there. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the story. So both Republicans and Democrats calling this a historic day. Former President Bill Clinton testifying before a congressional committee about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Just like Hillary Clinton's deposition yesterday, it is happening right near their home in Chappaqua, New York, outside of New York City at the Performing Arts Center, interestingly. So the former president shows up over and over again in the Epstein files, but he says that their, quote, brief acquaintance ended years before Epstein's crimes became public, telling the committee in his opening statement, I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos you show me, I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I didn't see. I know what I did, and more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing, and I did nothing wrong, says former President Bill Clinton. House Oversight Chairman James Comer says that the committee is not accusing the Clintons of wrongdoing, but it was a long battle to get to this moment. Watch.
It took 7 months to get the Clintons in here, but we've got them in here, and we look forward to asking lots of questions that I think any curious media outlet in America would have. Yesterday, Ms. Clinton deferred a lot of questions to her husband today.
Republicans have now set a new precedent, which is to bring in presidents and former presidents to testify. So we're once again going to make that call that we did yesterday. We are now asking and demanding that President Trump officially come in and testify in front of the Oversight Committee.
So Chief Congressional Correspondent Chad Pergram reporting live from Chappaqua, outside where all of this is happening. Hi, Chad.
Martha, good afternoon. Never before has a president undergone questioning at a deposition by a congressional committee under a subpoena. Now, that changed this morning. Bill Clinton knew and traveled with Jeffrey Epstein. There is no allegation of wrongdoing by Bill Clinton, but Democrats say this is all a distraction from dealing with President Trump.
But let's be real, we are talking to the wrong president today. President Trump is the one who has not released 2.5 million files. President Trump is the one who is blocking our investigation. President Trump is the one who wants this to go away, but it will not go away.
Now, here is Bill Clinton's statement to the committee this morning. Even with 2020 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me pause. We are only here because he hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with his 2008 guilty plea, I had long stopped associating with him. Now, we're also learning about Hillary Clinton's testimony yesterday. Florida Republican Anna Paulina Luna suggested there may have been an effort by a U.S. ally to target the Clintons. She said Epstein was running a, quote, honeypot operation.
I don't know that Secretary Clinton was all that honest about the context of this investigation. We asked extensively about intelligence ties, whether or not she felt that she was targeted as a result of possibly an intelligence gathering operation. And she was very curiously interested in that.
Also, one Republican said Hillary Clinton lost her cool and was combative with the committee when asked tough questions. Ms. Mace, what do you mean that Hillary Clinton was screaming?
She was unhinged, and I hope that President Clinton is less unhinged today than his wife was yesterday. You'll see it.
Now, the public can judge for itself when the video and transcript comes out, perhaps over the weekend. The deposition will probably go until this evening. Back to you.
Okay, Chad, thank you very much. Constitutional attorney Jonathan Turley pointing out that being mentioned in the Epstein files does not mean that someone did something wrong. And we have seen that in this case today. This is exactly what Bill Clinton is claiming, that he did nothing wrong in this situation. He wrote, this is Jonathan Turley writing in on the Hill in December, quote, everyone loves gotcha stories exposing celebrities. It doesn't matter that the conduct being exposed might be entirely legal and unrelated to any underlying crime. The result is guilt by association without context as to what that association amounted to in any given case. Jonathan Turley is also a George Washington University law professor, Fox News contributor, and author of Rage and the Republican. He joins me now. Jonathan, I think I really recommend that piece to everyone because it's easy to get sucked into sort of the salacious nature of this and the photos that everyone is seeing and to read into them what may or may not be there. But you have a lot of experience with President Bill Clinton, having testified at his impeachment trial about how it should be approached constitutionally. Your thoughts on this process? This is not a legal process that we're watching today or listening to today.
Well, thank you, Martha. I think you're absolutely correct. It is troubling that we have discarded all of these protections. We just had a member, Ro Khanna, who rather theatrically revealed the names of 4 men that he said were being hidden and protected by the Department of Justice. Turns out they were in the files. They had nothing to do with Epstein. And so that's part of the danger here, is that these are files that are often raw, and grand jury testimony is often raw, swooping up, sort of scooping up everything there is to sort of filter through it. So we have to keep that in mind. Also, we also keep in mind that no one is suggesting that President Clinton committed a crime here, and there have been layers of prosecutors that have looked at this evidence, and none of them have brought charges against him. Now, for critics, this is a rather predictable approach. They're going to view the Performance Arts Center to be an appropriate place here for the deposition, because it does seem like he's sort of adopting the Sergeant Schultz defense and saying, I saw nothing, which is a predictable defense to be made. It could also happen to be true. So, we did have most of these facts come out after 2008. The critics will point out that Maxwell, the chief lieutenant or associate of Epstein, was rather prominently at the wedding of Chelsea Clinton after these allegations were known by many. But none of that amounts to evidence that there was any direct wrongdoing by President Clinton.
Yeah. And as I believe you pointed out, there were, I think, 6 attorney generals to the United States who have had access to these files, who looked at these cases as part of the Department of Justice investigations. And as heinous and awful as the actions of this man appear, and we've heard a lot from people who say that they were victimized by him, we do not have a direct line of accusation from them to these individuals, not to Bill Clinton, as far as we have seen, and not to President Trump either. President Trump commented on this whole thing again today when he was asked. Watch.
I don't like seeing him deposed, but, they certainly went after me a lot more than that. I don't like seeing him. Look, I like him, and I don't like seeing him deposed.
From that perspective, as a president of the United States, watching a former president of the United States go through this, and as President Trump pointed out, he's been the subject of a lot of investigation himself. Your thoughts on that as a big picture, Jonathan?
Well, this is an unprecedented moment, as Chad pointed out, of a president being brought in former president being brought in under subpoena. Not exactly willingly. It took a lot to get them, and very close to a contempt vote. But there are still questions that we want to hear some answers to. There were some witnesses that contradicted President Clinton's denial of being on the island. There's no direct proof that he was on the island. It's important that the island apparently did have evidence or pictures that a person would have understood what this person's proclivities were and his abuses were from that, from the interior of that island dwelling. But at the end of the day, we'll have to see how he does that. But it does sound like he's going to be denying knowledge and denying wrongdoing. And there's not a lot of countervailing evidence to suggest that that's a lie.
Yeah. Here he is way back when you were involved in the impeachment process in terms of laying out the constitutional foundations of this, just to give everybody a little bit of a peek back. Watch this.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
Yeah, that takes me right back, Jonathan, and it does undermine the credibility, and I'm sure it does you too. The questions of credibility, when people in power, when Bill Clinton says this, and then today he says, I didn't do anything wrong, I don't remember anything. These things hang around a person.
Well, they do. I mean, President Clinton lied. A federal judge said he effectively committed perjury. That does not give you a good foundation to going into another deposition. The greatest threat to Clinton today is himself, of being too clever by half.
Jonathan Turley, constitutional law professor, fresh out of class. Thank you for joining us today, and good to see you as always. It was fun watching those old videos of you as well. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
We've got a busy 2 hours coming up, so stay tuned and a lot of breaking news to watch for. On that note, let's bring in our Fox News Sunday anchor and chief legal correspondent, Shannon Bream. Shannon, great to have you here to react to all that news.
Oh, my goodness. That was newsy.
Yeah, so our team is trying to cut the sound that we just heard from President Trump a moment ago. Okay, we've got it. Quick turnaround here. President Trump was just asked about Bill Clinton, his deposition, and he said this.
I don't like seeing him deposed, but, They certainly went after me a lot more than that. I don't like seeing them. Look, I like them, and I don't like seeing them deposed.
This is Bill Clinton's opening statement posted on X, Shannon, but even with 2020 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me pause. We are only here because he hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with this 2008 guilty plea, I had long stopped associating with him. Interesting to hear the president react and sort of come to his defense and say, I don't like to see this happening.
Yeah, and he had been asked, the question was, does it set a precedent? And so every sitting president's got to think about that. Does this mean I'm going to be looped into this? Because we have a number of Democrat members of the House now saying, oh, we're going to try to get him. We want his deposition as well. I think there's some part of President Trump that would like to defend himself because he says, I've got nothing to hide. But just about every legal person on his team would probably tell him, don't do it.
Yeah. Here's a little bit more of what we heard from that presser today. This is Rep. Comer speaking about how Hillary deferred a lot of her questions to her husband. Listen.
Yesterday, Ms. Clinton deferred a lot of questions to her husband today. There were at least a dozen times when she said, you'll have to ask my husband that. I can't answer that. So we already had a big portfolio of questions for him, and that increased yesterday.
Interesting.
I know. It's almost like a little bit of the heat shifting off from him to her. And she was able to say with plausible deniability, I didn't have this relationship with him. I'm not on the plane. I'm not on the island, any of that. But we know there's a lot of public information about President Clinton, his own office admitting, yes, there are flight logs. He flew with him. There are pictures. There are the pictures we have questions about, like the hot tub and the pool and what's all that. I mean, they definitely were very friendly. But the former president says that's pre-2008. And I don't know anything about the wrongdoing.
Really interesting. I also want to ask you about the news from the president just a few moments ago as we see the chopper and activity there about to depart for JBA. He said they're not happy with the way Iran is negotiating. As we head into a very uncertain weekend, Shannon, I'll get your thoughts on this. You know, they're not certain they can avoid a long, drawn-out conflict. They're not getting there. President Trump said to Peter Doocy when he was asked about this, what is your thinking about what we're hearing about these negotiations as they head into this fourth round of talks?
Yeah, so we're told there are going to be talks again in Vienna, but it's clear there's a ratcheting up of where we are, obviously with our military assets in the region, but also this conversation. Thought it was interesting that Vice President Vance said to the Washington Post, no way, when they were asked about a prolonged conflict. We know that's something our allies and partners in the region have been very worried about, that this would spread beyond just that pinpoint if you go into Iran. So a lot of questions about where you go next, but the president, he's been briefed by the head of U.S. CENTCOM. We know every option is right now on the table for him.
Yeah, you're on the 5 tonight. You've got your show, Fox News Sunday, coming up this weekend. What are we looking forward to?
So we're going to have General Kellogg with us to break down where we are with respect to Iran. At that point, we've got Senators Tim Kaine and Dave McCormick to give a bipartisan look, and also a reminder that we're still in a partial government shutdown. We'll ask if they have any plans for solving that. And we visit one of the big Senate races in North Carolina. We'll talk to Michael Watley about that.
That is a big show coming up. We'll see you Sunday. We'll see you tonight on the 5. Shannon, thank you so very much. All right, John?
All right, yeah. All right, well, to this alert, right now, former President Bill Clinton is in the hot seat. And moments ago, the former president released his opening statement. We have those remarks. We will bring you those in just a moment. His opening statement hot off the press as he's being grilled by the House Oversight Committee about his relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was deposed yesterday. Republicans say there were at least a dozen times when she deferred their questions to her husband. He has a lot to answer. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. Donna Rotuno, Fox News contributor, criminal defense attorney, co-host of the weekly Rap Sheet, and host of the podcast Crime and Justice with Donna Rotuno, and Paul Morrow, attorney, retired NYPD inspector, Fox News contributor, and also host of the weekly Rap Sheet on Fox Nation. Well, let's start here. A trove of documents was wheeled into the Performing Arts Center in Chappaqua, New York, ahead of the former president's arrival. Clinton released a copy of those remarks, which I noted. He said this, quote, "First, I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos you show me, I have two things at the end of the day that matter more than your interpretation of those 20-year-old photos. I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I did not see. I know what I did, and more importantly, what I did not do. I saw nothing," he said, "and I did nothing wrong." Oversight Committee members expect today's deposition to take longer than the 6 hours his wife Hillary spent in the hot seat yesterday. And afterwards, Hillary Clinton accused the committee of wasting time.
I'm not going to do it again. They had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. If they are going to fulfill their responsibilities to literally investigate the investigations, which is what they originally said was the scope of their work, I think they could have spent the day more productively.
House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer has said neither Bill nor Hillary are being accused of wrongdoing, but there were inconsistencies in Hillary's story.
We look forward to asking lots of questions that I think any curious media outlet in America would have. Ms. Clinton deferred a lot of questions to her husband today. There were at least a dozen times when she said, "You'll have to ask my husband that. I can't answer that." So we already had a big portfolio of questions for him, and that increased yesterday.
Donna, you and I were talking about this opening statement. He kind of pre-butts his opening statement, former President Clinton, with this. As someone who grew up in a home with domestic abuse, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call for justice for his crimes, not sweetheart deals.
Well, I think that's interesting for the former president to say. We as American people watch Bill Clinton lie to us time and time again about his own wrongdoing. So I think we have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. Jeffrey Epstein is somebody who he was involved with for a long time. There are photos to prove it. There are emails to prove it. Now, whether that means that he was involved in wrongdoing is different than whether he knew about it. And, he talks about this 2008 plea deal, as Hillary spoke about yesterday, and talked about how it was this sweetheart deal and that wasn't right. But if you know anything about the way criminal cases go through a system and why cases plead, a lot of times it has to do with non-cooperation by the victims that are involved. And I know a lot about that 2008 case. One of the prosecutors on that case happens to be a friend of mine. And I know firsthand that they had issues with people wanting to move forward. So that deal wasn't because Jeffrey Epstein got some great deal because of who he was. It was because of problems with their case. So to kind of blame that as the reason that he got away with this for so long, I think is probably not accurate. Beyond that, Hillary has spent 4 decades in the public eye talking about how she stands by Bill. She has never one time condemned him for the actions that he has been involved with women. She always condemned the women, and so here we are now with this sort of holier than thou take on it that I think Bill is going to take as well. And with Jeffrey Epstein no longer on this planet, we're never going to have answers from the other side.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of frustration among those young women, those survivors, that they won't get those answers. Emily, he says, Bill Clinton, the second reason I'm here is that the girls and women whose lives Jeffrey Epstein destroyed deserve not only justice but healing. He said that. He also stands up for Hillary Clinton. He said, but before we start, I have to get personal. You made Hillary come in. She had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, nothing. She has no memory of even meeting him. She neither traveled with him nor visited him or his properties. Whether you subpoena 10 people or 10,000, including her, it was simply not right, he says.
That's fine. I mean, I think we've known for decades that they are, at least in public, quite a team, and neither will ever say anything untoward or contradictory about the other. To me, it means nothing, and you hit the nail on the head when you talked about his pierced credibility up until this point. And I think the notion of embarrassment, the notion of power dilution is quite a tempting sort of blackmail source, and I think reason behind so many people that keep their mouth shut. We have likened this situation to Weinstein, to Kevin Spacey, to these sort of poorly kept secrets that are well known within circles. And the reality is you can't prove, short of something in writing, that someone knew something. And that's why these people are allowed to fester as malignant tumors in our society, because you couple people that don't want to shake something like a marriage or a public perception or their power, you couple that with victims being voiceless and terrified and having zero type of representation, even being forced to sign NDAs. I mean, the level of complexity here that stifled these hundreds and hundreds of victims and that emboldened these hundreds and hundreds of either bystanders or predators, it's a complex and unfortunate machine. So I don't think that there's going to be a provable element here unless, yes, something is in writing. But I will say this, chipping away at it will work. it's just like a drop of water on a stone. It will work as long as there keeps being this pressure, because eventually there will be something that is provable, and then the entire sham can finally come to light.
Paul, I heard an attorney say yesterday that he would start with the pictures of Bill Clinton and Epstein and drill down on those and ask the context, the time, the place, the memory. Probably a good place to start.
Well, first thing I would ask in that context would be, did you pose for that painting where you're in a dress that they found on the wall on the Upper East Side? What's the story with that?
Yeah.
All right, a couple of things real quick. First of all, if this is such a nothing burger, then why did the Clintons fight it so hard? All right, come out, say your piece, and go away. Obviously, they were going to be embarrassed, etc. Number two, I would also ask in terms of how they set up Bill's testimony here with Hillary, who was the +1 relative to Ghislaine. Now, the Clintons are good lawyers, even though Bill lost his license. They will have lawyered this from now until doomsday, so they're going to have their answers. I wouldn't expect any big revelations, but put them on the spot and say, do you remember who the +1 was, since Hillary said it and then dove for, a foxhole because she didn't want to answer that question. Now, we're asking the wrong stuff, all right? The Clintons are old news, and I think the country wants to know more about Epstein's machinations than they do about Bill Clinton. I think the public has long ago made up their mind about Bill Clinton. What I would be asking is the following. The Clinton Global Initiative, all right, we all know, anybody who has seen or read the book Clinton Cash, the Peter Schweizer things, knows what that thing is about. I was an early warning relative to this NGO system that the progressives have put together that's a shadow government that has Americans saying, wait a minute, where's all this money coming from? Oh, it's our tax money. How did that work out? They should be looking at any of the commonalities between Epstein and that, because I think they're likely there. I don't know anything, but I think that they are. That's where I would be going. And then lastly, real quick, the search warrant returns. I've been saying this since I'm on here. If you do a search warrant, what you find, you got to bring back to the judge. This is what I got out of the house. Okay. At least 3 search warrants, likely 4. The house out in the desert, the one on the Upper East Side, and the house on the island. What did you find? Because there's going to be an entry in there that says 400 videotapes. And now you know how he had the leverage he had. That's where to start. Forget the painting, forget the photos. Where did he get the leverage to have Bill Gates eaten out of his hands?
Yeah, no, the leverage is a big part of this. You know, Maria, it's interesting. Political Playbook was writing yesterday about how this new generation of Democrats is basically saying, you can see it here, but we're not going to have fealty to our forebears. There's always been this deference to the Clintons, but that time has passed. They were a part of calling them in and said this is a bipartisan, both-party situation that we both want to see happen.
That's right. I mean, some of them voted for this in the House, which is extraordinary. We can see how times are changing. And look, I agree with Emily. I think we just need to keep chipping away with this. I actually would have liked to see these on camera, on video. I think transparency here is the best thing we can do. The Clintons wanted them on camera. Why don't we want to see that? Why are we just relying on members of Congress who do have their own reasons for saying things to come out and tell us what they said? So I would have liked to see them on camera.
That's going to come out, by the way. I want on the first go. You're saying.
I want everyone who's mentioned multiple times here to be deposed. Larry Summers, Bill Gates, and you're all probably going to yell at me. Donald Trump is mentioned 6,000 times at least in the documents we have seen. So I think if we want to get to the bottom of the Epstein story, we have to depose not just Bill Clinton, not just Hillary, who never met him, and I actually think it was a waste of time that they deposed her, but all these powerful men who were caught up. You know, Les Wexner had to answer questions last week, who were caught up in this. And I think that has to include Donald Trump. He is named in these thousands of times. And there's also, I mean, Epstein's not alive, but Ghislaine Maxwell still is. And she is clearly trying to get a pardon from President Trump. She was moved to this lower security prison. She can still answer questions. And I think, you know, I'm the only non-lawyer on this couch, but I think there has to be a way to compel her to do so. I don't know what it is, but I would like to hear from her.
I would note that Donald Trump was not on the plane, so putting him in the same pool as Bill Clinton, who was on the plane, I think it was 17 times. But he's mentioned, Kayleigh, all of, so ask him the question. However, and I would also note that there is video. It's going to come out as soon as today. But you are right that the Clintons wanted on the first go this to be on-cam testimony, not characterized, and then video thereafter. But we will be getting the video. That's right. I'm told Hillary is, at least Lauren Boebert said she's not the happiest on camera. So
you know what? I wouldn't be either.
We'll see. All right.
I don't blame her.
Former President Bill Clinton today telling the House Oversight Committee he had no idea about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Clinton adding, quote, as someone who grew up in a home with domestic abuse, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call for justice for his crimes, not sweetheart deals. Let's check in with Fox News contributor and former House Oversight Chair Jason Chaffetz. He's live out of Chapel for us at this hour. So, Jason, your takeaway from that, from former President Bill Clinton?
Well, I guess it begs the question, when did he contact authorities? When did he figure out something was awry? Because certainly the pictures and the videos and everything else, did he ever contact law enforcement? Contrast that with President Trump, who back in 20 years ago, 2006, contacted local law enforcement, said, hey, you got to look into this Ghislaine Maxwell. You got to look into Jeffrey Epstein. There's something really wrong going on here. I'm not aware of Bill Clinton, President Clinton, ever contacting law enforcement and saying something was awry.
Well, this, Jason, from his opening statement, it reads, quote, I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos you show me, I have two things that at the end of the day matter more than your interpretation of those 20-year-old photos. I know what I saw and, more importantly, what I didn't see. I know what I did and, more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. But to your point, he's referencing that he didn't do anything wrong when it came to the involvement with Epstein and what was happening there. But if he had seen something, he certainly could have done something about it, Jason.
Yeah, he could have. Now, I know that after the first hour of peppering of questions by both sides, he has not yet been confronted. In fact, I've been told at least this hour he's actually going to be shown some photos that include President Clinton in those photos and be asked specifically, probably Congresswoman Mace, Congresswoman Luna, as well, of course, as Chairman Comer. But he has not yet been shown those photos. It'll be fascinating to know how he answers that, how he explains that away, because, you know, it's from the surface. As somebody who's been married for 35 years, that doesn't look so good.
Got it. James Comer stepped out just a short time ago. There was a press conference with the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Chairman Comer said this about Bill Clinton's testimony. Listen.
Ranking Member Garcia asked President Clinton, quote, should President Trump be called to answer questions from this committee? And President Clinton said, that's for you to decide. And the president went on to say that the president, Trump, has never said anything to me to make me think he was involved.
Your thoughts on that, Jason?
Look, there are people within the Epstein orbit that should be called, but there needs to be a predicate before you call these people. We want justice for these victims, and there are a lot of victims. And how was this predator, this monster, able to wield influence and money and get everybody to turn their head so that they didn't actually do something? The only person that I know of who actually contacted law enforcement and said, hey, there's something wrong here, was Donald Trump, and that happened 20 years ago. And so if somebody else was doing that, I mean, there was a case to be made against Epstein, and there's, I think, a bigger, broader question. Why wasn't more done about this? I didn't see anything happen to this during the Obama years. I didn't during the Biden years. It was only during the Bush administration and the Trump administration that they actually put this guy in jail.
Last thing here. This is Jonathan Turley on the accusation that Epstein was helping the Clinton family. Listen.
What is sort of the modus operandi of the Clintons is to go into these depositions and to evade direct answers. But they're going to get specific questions about these emails in which Epstein is indicating that he was not only just a great contributor, but helped establish this initiative and help the Clintons in their efforts. And that was reinforced with the appearance of figures like Maxwell at the wedding of their daughter.
Oh, there was that. Final thought on that, Jason.
Yeah, and it also begs a lot of questions about what the Clinton Foundation was doing, how much money was flowing into the foundation, the Clinton Initiative, because the proximity to the flow of money and Jeffrey Epstein getting in trouble and having trouble just begs the question, what was he doing? I'm not saying that the Clintons necessarily did anything wrong, but if you're going to actually solve this problem and make sure that you can't just wield this influence to be a pedophile and be a sexual predator, then you got to understand that, because this guy was manipulating people across the world and taking down some very strong and important leaders. What was the impetus behind that? Who was this guy? And how did he wield that influence? Because it certainly looks like the Clintons were in that stratosphere with him.
That is a huge question at this hour. Jason Chaffetz live there in Chapel for us. Jason, thank you.
Interruption. Historical day for the United States Congress. We have listened to people all across America who have kept up with the whole Epstein investigation and are outraged by the obvious fact that men and women, for that matter, of great power and great wealth from all across the world have been able to get away with a lot of heinous crimes, and they haven't been held accountable, and they haven't even had to answer questions about what they knew and when they knew it. Today, we hope to be able to do as we did yesterday and continue to bring some of the most powerful people in the world in to answer questions. Again, no one's accusing anyone of any wrongdoing, but I think the American people have a lot of questions, and our House Oversight Committee is committed to getting answers. We're committed to transparency. We've already seen a lot of very powerful people who have been held accountable by having to resign in disgrace from various boards all over the world. We're going to continue to seek the truth, try to figure out how the government failed the victims, and try to hopefully hold more people accountable. That's what the purpose of this investigation is. I will say this, it's very difficult to get people in for these depositions of great power and great wealth. And I used yesterday and today as an example. It took 7 months to get the Clintons in here. But we've got them in here, and we look forward to asking lots of questions that I think any curious media outlet in America would have. Yesterday, Ms. Clinton deferred a lot of questions to her husband today. There were at least a dozen times when she said, "You'll have to ask my husband that. I can't answer that." So we already had a big portfolio of questions for him, and that increased yesterday. So we look forward to that. We'll be happy to answer a couple of questions.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Explain to us specifically what you need to hear from President Clinton today. What do you want to know?
Well, I think everyone's seen there are a lot of photos that have been released by the Department of Justice as well as the Epstein estate. There are a lot of email correspondence that included President Clinton. We know President Clinton had, and Secretary Clinton confirmed this yesterday, Jeffrey Epstein was in the White House 17 times while Bill Clinton was president. We know that Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane at least 27 times. So those are questions that we're going to ask. Everything that most media outlets have reported with respect to pictures and correspondence between Epstein, Maxwell, and Bill Clinton, these are all questions that we're going to ask today.
Yesterday, you both told me that you were planning on asking about an email that Howard Lutnick sent to Jeffrey Epstein, I presume about a Hillary Clinton fundraiser. I think that was the one. He's worth asking about. Is he not worth asking in to talk about what he might know?
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting when we hopefully get that video out later today or tomorrow as quick as we can get it out. I think it'll be interesting what Hillary Clinton said about Howard Lutnick.
And how she said it.
And how she said it. We looked, I think that was Miss Mace with the line of questioning. So there was a pretty thorough line of questioning yesterday between Miss Mace and Miss Clinton with respect to Lutnick. And I think you all find it very interesting what she had to say. But we're going to continue to ask questions of everyone that shows up in photos on the island and things like that. Yes.
I will be asking for him, yes.
You will.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we heard from Secretary Clinton after her deposition. She described the session as repetitive. She said it veered off topic. She was asked about things like UFOs, Pizzagate. Can you explain why those topics were brought up, and also in light of the release of that photo?
And she also said there were substantive questions yesterday, too. But one reason there were repetitive questions about Epstein is because we went through every email and every correspondence that implied Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein communicated often. You all have seen the email where he said that she looks better in person and all of that. Those were questions we asked. So every item of evidence that would suggest Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein had a close relationship, we went and asked about that. So it may have seemed repetitive because there was a lot of documentation that would suggest that she had a relationship with Epstein.
And
so
go
ahead.
Clear, Secretary Clinton actually asked about the NDAA. Sorry.
Go ahead.
To be clear, Secretary Clinton actually asked us about what happened with the disclosure language in the NDAA. So, I mean, I know she's trying to pivot from the fact that she's here and she had a very close relationship regarding the Clinton Foundation and Epstein and Maxwell. But the point is, and I think I'd like to hit on this with probably Ms. Mace here, but I think we have a very important interest and curiosity about what specifically the co-conspirators had a role in all this, right? We know for a fact that some of these were women, and I think that today, at least with my line of questioning, you know, I'm curious about that. Why is it that these women were given plea deals as adults for trafficking minors? How much of that did they witness, et cetera? And so, you know, I don't know that Secretary Clinton was all that honest about the context of this investigation. We asked extensively about intelligence ties, whether or not she felt that she was targeted as a result of possibly an intelligence gathering operation. And she was very curiously interested in that. And then also, you'll hear it in the response, but had told us to follow up with a few countries, one of which is our ally. So that's interesting.
And I think Ms. Luna brought up a good point about the Clinton Foundation. There's so many examples in the evidence the Department of Justice released in correspondence where Epstein bragged about how involved he was initially in setting up the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation. We asked those questions to Secretary Clinton yesterday, and she kept saying, well, she was in the Senate at that time. She wasn't focused on it. You'll have to ask my husband. So a lot of the Clinton Global Initiative questions yesterday went unanswered because Ms. Clinton deferred to her husband. So we'll do one more question. Annie, go ahead.
It's our understanding that you guys asked Secretary Clinton yesterday about photos of her husband in the Epstein files. What was her reaction when you showed various photos, for example, of her husband in the jacuzzi that we've seen?
I'm going to let Miss Mace answer that. We're on TV.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything. No, she didn't want to answer any questions about any of that and deferred most of those, if not all of those questions, to her husband, and he will be thoroughly asked about that today. You know, what did he know? When did he know? What did he see? Because there are other people who've come forward publicly, like Kevin Spacey, who thought all of this was very strange and actually a very high risk for a president of the United States or former president. It's all very bizarre, but I asked her very pointed questions, and you'll see that in the transcript and the video that comes out, and you'll see how she responded as well, screaming.
And we'll close with this. We're going to get the video out as quickly as we can get it uploaded in the sound and everything from yesterday. So this is, for all practical purposes, a public deposition. The American people are going to see it. I've heard C-SPAN's going to air it wire to wire. So everyone's going to see what was asked yesterday. And I think that'll answer a lot of questions, especially with Lutnick and other things like that. Throughout the day, we'll try to send different members out to give you brief updates. We don't want to disclose what's going on in the deposition specifically until after at the conclusion, but we'll keep you updated, and we appreciate everyone being here and look forward to updating you throughout the day.
Ms. Mace, what do you mean that Hillary Clinton was screaming?
She was unhinged, and I hope that President Clinton is less unhinged today than his wife was yesterday. You'll see it.
Why do you think she had a relationship with Mr. Epstein?
Say again?
Why do you think she had a relationship with Mr. Epstein?
Well, he was basically instrumental, for his words, and I think you'll find out from Clinton probably today in sending up the Clinton Global Initiative.
Congresswoman, President Trump said that he was bothered by Bill Clinton coming in.
The biggest thing is we need transparency, accountability, and we need justice for the victims, and we need to make sure we find out how can we write laws to prevent human trafficking and prevent people of that evil level infiltrating the highest levels of government. Thank you.
Okay, Republicans now heading in. Keep in mind, Democrats are on this committee, too, and they're asking questions as well, and they may come to the mic.
Joining us now is former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and UC Berkeley law professor John Yoo. Professor, it's great to see you. Nice to have you here in Dallas. The entire conversation around the Epstein files is one that demands a certain level of responsibility because so many names have been wrapped up in what amounts to tens of thousands of documents. The question is whether or not a benefit of the doubt should be afforded to everyone in the files, but in this case, particularly and specifically a benefit of the doubt to President Clinton?
I agree with you, Will. No one here is guilty until it's been proven, until they have a chance to face their accusers, before they have a chance to have a jury, hear the charges. But I was an investigator in the 1990s on the Whitewater Senate investigation. And after seeing this and my time there, I don't think that the Clintons should get the benefit of the doubt. We learned from the 1990s that Bill Clinton lies. We learned that he committed perjury under oath, as found by a federal judge, and he was impeached for it. And the only reason he was not convicted and removed by office was not because the senators thought he wasn't the liar, but they thought it would hurt the country too much to remove him from office at that time. So I totally see why he should be brought in under oath and answer questions before a congressional committee. Another point is the congressional committee is not a prosecutor. They have a remit to ask much more questions than really find out what's going on beyond just charging people. One other point is, I don't think Bill Clinton's been responding to the questions. To say, oh, I cut off contact with Epstein when I heard that he was convicted, that's non-responsive, right? Well, if a prosecutor asked you that and you said that, a judge would say, no, answer the real question. And the real question is, what are you doing in those photos? How did you come to be there? Did you know these people might have been underage? Did you know what Epstein was up to? He's not answering those questions when he just says, well, I just cut off contact with him once I heard he'd been prosecuted.
All right, we have a small update. A Democratic congressman just said Clinton is answering all their questions, adding that he was asked some tough questions and he answered them well, saying Clinton has not used the Fifth Amendment. That does not go to the point that you just brought up of whether or not he is responsive to the questions being asked. He has not apparently invoked the Fifth Amendment.
Exactly. And also, I hate to say it, but just because Bill Clinton says something under oath, given what we saw, what he did when he was a sitting president under oath, questioned by Ken Starr, the independent counsel, you would want to then, as the committee investigators, go back and check everything he said, get testimony from other people. You showed photos where people's faces are redacted. The committee wants to go interview those people and say, is Bill Clinton telling the truth? Because we know in the past, he has no problem lying under oath to federal prosecutors.
And pointing out that you worked on the Whitewater investigation, that relationship to the truth wasn't only tenuous with Bill Clinton, but also with Hillary Clinton.
I have to tell you, I did not understand it at the time. Why not come out? You're the president, you're the first lady. Tell the truth, tell the American people everything, let them make their own decision. I can tell you, they fought us tooth and nail for every little piece of evidence, every question we wanted to ask. They did not trust the system. They did not trust prosecutors, the Justice Department, judges. They fought everything. And so after that experience, I don't know why the American people think they should get any kind of benefit of the doubt.
Not to mention the pictures that we've shown on this screen, which in and of themselves should lead to some skepticism on the truth behind Bill Clinton's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And for that matter, not just Bill Clinton's track record with the truth, but his track record with women. All of these things are part of the record that require us not to simply accept the word of the former president. And just to be clear, John, you have pointed this out. This is against the backdrop of not believing that we should drag every president before every investigative committee.
I totally get why President Trump, in the clip you played, said, I don't like what's happening to Bill Clinton, because one thing we got to be conscious of is we don't want to harass former presidents so much that it prevents future presidents from protecting the country, enforcing the law, doing their job. We don't want presidents to think, because I have to make the tough call now, I'm going to be harassed the rest of my life by lawsuits and investigations. But the Supreme Court has answered this for us in the Trump immunity case, which you covered quite extensively on your show when it came out. The court said, we're going to give presidents immunity for the things they did in office as official acts. Bill Clinton's being questioned about things he did long after he left office as a private citizen. I don't think there's any kind of constitutional protection or a benefit of the doubt that applies to Bill Clinton in those photos that he, is undertaken in these very questionable circumstances many years after he's president.
All right, John Yoo, teaching at UC Berkeley and now also University of Texas. It's great to see you, John.
I got to sign up with you guys in Texas. I'm one of the many Californians leaving the state.
Moving here to the great state of Texas. All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.